Welcome to the road to 1 million US dollars. Let's get right into the Bitcoin chart for today, starting on the 4-hour time frame, because right now Bitcoin is crashing massively to the downside after breaking this ascending line of support. So then after we lost that level of support, we then immediately fell down to this next level of support to the downside, being at exactly 100K in the Bitcoin price, where so far on this previous 4-hour candle, we actually saw a bit of a bounce from that level. So yes, we have found some support there in the short term. Most importantly, I think we should be watching this descending trend line in the Bitcoin price. Now, overall, right now, I would say, well, so long as we are holding above this ascending trend line here, Bitcoin is basically still just trending up, although in the case that we were to break down below one of these two trend lines, that should definitely be a warning signal in the short term. Now, for example, in the case that Bitcoin does get a bounce, but then falls back below that ascending trend line at a later point before I record my next video, then in that case, I would be looking for another move to the downside, for example, down to that descending line of support. However, if this dump continues to keep dumping here and we fall below that descending trend line at 100K, then I will start looking towards some different levels of support. So here you can see the big support and resistance levels a little bit more clearly. And just now we actually touched into this big level of support sitting from 100K all the way down to 99,000 in the Bitcoin price. If we were to fall below that 99K level, then I'm looking towards this 97.5K level in the Bitcoin price as some potential short-term support. Another way to look for some support here on this 4-hour time frame is by taking a look at the Fibonacci levels. So if we were to fall below that 97.5K level, the next Fibonacci level of support to the downside below that is this Fibonacci golden pocket sitting between 95.8K and 95.2K. So I would expect there to be some short-term support here at the very least, in the case that we actually break all of these levels. But of course, do keep in mind that that is not a call or a prediction, guys. I'm simply recording these videos 24 hours in advance. So therefore, I have to explain a couple different scenarios so you guys can be ready for any situation that the market throws at us. In the last video, we also talked about this RSI momentum indicator for Bitcoin on the 4-hour time frame. At the time, we were in this overbought condition, which is whenever the RSI is above 70. Like I said in that video, typically when the RSI is in overbought territory, you would need to see the RSI cool off back to around this 50 level here. Now, the way the RSI actually cools off is by some choppy sideways price action or potentially some bearish momentum. And safe to say that we got the bearish momentum in the charts here. So yes, the RSI is now fully reset, although considering that it is now below the 50 level, it means that we are currently seeing bearish momentum on this time frame. Either way, it's still good to see that that played out as expected. Next, let's take a look at the 1-week Bitcoin liquidation heat map. Earlier today, we took out a bunch of liquidity at about 101K. There's still some liquidity around this 99.4K level, roughly speaking, but the next biggest pocket of liquidity to the downside is already sitting at 96.9K. On the 1-month Bitcoin liquidation heat map, notice how we have now taken out most of that liquidity to the upside over the last week or so. And just now at 100K, we took out a big pocket of liquidity, close to $300 million worth of long positions being liquidated right there. And yes, on the 1-month liquidation heat map, we see a similar story. At the exact same level, 97,000, we see another big pocket of liquidity. In the case that you're not familiar with how this chart works, typically the Bitcoin price gets attracted to where there is the most liquidity on this chart. And whenever we take out a big level of liquidity, so these big yellow areas right here, sometimes that can be an area where you might see a reversal or some support start to come into the market, or resistance, of course, depending on from which angle you're taking out the liquidity. So for me personally, I'm only using it as a piece of confluence and not something that I'm specifically trading off of. Like in this case, we took out liquidity to the downside. I now need to long or something like that. Of course, I'm going to combine it with other risk factors, technical analysis, etc., like I shared with you earlier in this video. But of course, that's not financial advice. I'm simply telling you what I'm seeing in the charts, and you can do with that information what you like. But either way, this has been today's market update. Thank you very much for watching once again, and I will see you tomorrow in the next one.